Hey guys, so let's have a look at another automation. This time it's the bulk auto lister. What this automation does, it lets you list many of your tokens in bulk without breaking the floor. Before we go into details of how it works, let's have a look at it in action. Right, so I have a number of tokens from this collection, the Pepe beans, in my wallet. As you can see, I have 5 of these tokens that I would like to list for sale. But I don't want to list all of them on the floor, because obviously that would break the floor. It would cause a floor that is thick, and it would likely result in none of them selling. And it would probably cause other listers to undercut my floor, since I made it very difficult for them to sell their token at a thick floor with 5 tokens in them. Let's have a look at what's happening with the floor of this token on OpenSea. As we can see, the floor on OpenSea is 0.028, and it's quite thick, right? So there's a lot of tokens listed at floor. What I don't want to do is list all of my tokens for 0.028 to end up breaking the floor. And what I will do is I will list my first token at 0.028 and the others with 10% increments above it. So the second one would be somewhere around 0.3 ETH and 0.32 ETH, 0.34 ETH, and so on and so forth. Not sure if the math is 100% correct there. So that will happen with OpenSea. But I also want to list on Blur to maximize my chances of selling the tokens. Obviously, I want to list on the OpenSea floor on OpenSea and on the Blur floor on Blur. Now the floors are quite different. The Blur floor is at 0.009 ETH, so around the third of the OpenSea floor. What I don't want to do is use the same floor in both marketplaces, because maybe I will be able to sell on OpenSea on the OpenSea floor, and also maybe I will be able to sell on Blur on the Blur floor. I just want to get rid of these tokens. As you can see, the floor is quite thick here as well, but what I will do is I will list one token at floor, so that's 0.009, and then list the rest in 10% increments above it. So the second token will go probably around 0.01, and the next one 0.011, and then 0.012, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's see the automation. List 5 of my Pepe's beans at 10% increasing increments starting from the floor price on both Blur and OpenSea. So it's quite simple to use. I simply go onto my templates, I select my template to create an automation from, and I add a name. Bulk lister Pepe's bean. I enable it on creation. I will add the collection ID. I can also search for it. I just copy paste the address in here. I will use my main wallet to list from. The ListingLadderIncrement will give me the percentage-wise increment from floor for my second, third, fourth, and fifth tokens. So if, let's say, I list the first token on 0.2 ETH, the next token will be listed at 0.22, the next one 0.24, and so on and so forth. So the 0.1 here represents a 10% increment. Count of tokens to list, obviously I'm listing 5 tokens here, and the list lower limit is the absolute minimum at which I want to list. This is helpful if I want to avoid floor price manipulators. The automation will under no circumstance list below this lower limit. I set a ridiculously low number here because obviously the floor of this collection is very, very low, and then I go ahead and create it. Right, so the automation should already be running, and here I can monitor what it's doing. Now, it's important to note that in order to make sure that I've set everything up correctly, I have the listing action turned off. And instead of it, I have a simulation alert that will simply send messages to my Telegram with simulated listing price points. So here we can see the automation doing its thing. It looks like it ran successfully. Let's have a look at my Telegram to see where the simulated listing price points are. Right, so here we can see the simulated list prices for each token. we can see that my token count 2458 would have been listed on Blur at 0.009. The next token, obviously 10% increment above it, another 10%, and so on and so forth. Now, this is for Blur, right? And for OpenSea, we see the same mechanism. We have one token listed at floor. As you can see, the OpenSea floor is 0.028, and then 10% increments above it, right up until all 5 of my tokens have been listed for sale. Now, what I will do now is I will check that the listing prices are correct as expected, both on OpenSea as on Blur, just to make sure that I've set everything up right. If I have a look, the Blur price is this, and that should match with the floor on Blur, which is correct. And the same thing for OpenSea. I have 0.028 for my first listing, which is the same as the OpenSea floor. And that is correct as well. This is the floor on OpenSea. As you can see here, 0.028. Now let's go and activate this automation for real. So now my listings can go out. I will go to settings, and then I will search for my listing actions and activate them. As you can see here, the listing action has been disabled, and I have a notify alert before it. So if I have a look at the notify alert, I can see that this is the simulation alert that simulates my bids. I can turn this off because now I'm confident that the listings will go out at the right price, and I can turn the listing actions on. This was for Blur, and I'll do the same in my second group, which will be for OpenSea. Once I click update, I scroll back up to see how often this listing repeats. It repeats every 15 minutes, so now I have to wait 15 minutes for the lists to happen again. Let's quicken things up a bit and decrease it down to 1 minute. So I will repeat every 1 minute. That way I'll list again right now. Let's wait a minute. Right, so I can see the second instance has started running, and now it will start listing the tokens. I will go to Blur and have a look at my tokens to see them being listed in real time. They haven't started listing yet. Let's look at OpenSea. If we go on to Compass and click on the alert, we can see, as you can see, the Blur listings are already coming in. If I do a refresh, as you can see, they are being listed at increments. Look how nice that is, starting from the Blur floor. And it should happen the same way with OpenSea as well. Looks like it takes a little bit longer on OpenSea. Let's have a look at where it goes. Oh, it should already be listing on OpenSea as well. As you can see, the list actions are coming in. If I do a quick refresh here, the listings are starting to show. So, right, that's the first token listed at the OpenSea floor. That's the second one with a 10% increment. They take a little while to appear. OpenSea is a bit slow on showing the current listings. Right, so now all of the tokens are listed. As you can see, the nice ladder increments, 10% above for each. I can change this 10% to any increment I like. And now all of my tokens are successfully listed on both Blur and OpenSea. Right, so let's have a look at how exactly this automation works. Let's bring it back to every 15 minutes, just because my expiration date for the lists are set for 15 minutes, and I want my next listing happen just when the previous ones expire. And by the way, with these 15 minutes windows, my tokens will stay listed to floor, even if the floor drops, or even if one of the tokens get bought at floor. So let's say my cheapest listing gets bought at 0.009. In the next 15-minute window, everything will adjust accordingly. So then I'll have the floor at 0.01, and that's where my cheapest token will sit at. And everything else will be readjusted. And if the floor drops, so it drops to, let's say, 0.005, then all my listings will adjust downwards every 15 minutes. So that way I can rest assured that everything is listed relative to floor as it is intended, no matter what the floor is. Obviously, I have the lower listing limit, which is my hard floor under which I will not list under any circumstance. If the floor drops below that lower limit, as you can see here, I've added a ridiculously low lower limit. If the floor drops below that lower limit, the listings will simply happen at the lower limits. Let's have a look at how it works. We have the inputs right here. The automation repeats every 15 minutes. First, we get the information. So we get the tokens from my wallet that have this collection ID that I specified up in the input. Then I have the get token balance. What this does, it checks how many Pepe's beans I have in my wallet. The next step will say that the automation will only continue if I have at least one Pepe bean in my wallet. Next, I get the collection floor on OpenSea, and then I get the collection floor on Blur. And what I do next is I have a loop over items, and that will simply loop over every single NFT I have in my wallet from that collection. First, it will calculate an increasing listing price increment. This is a simple calculation that adds 10% starting from floor to every single listing coming after it. I have my simulator alert, which is disabled. If I enable it real quick, I can see what it shows. And these are the simulated listing price points. These price points are exactly the same as in the actual listing action. This one is for Blur, and it will list my token for 15 minutes at the list price specified by my little calculator up here that calculates the incremental prices. Next, I have the only continue if the index, so the number of the NFT that I'm selling, is lower than the count of tokens to list. So if I want to list 5 tokens, then this action will stop the listings on Blur if I reach my 5th token that it was listed. So I will not list more than the specified number of tokens up in the inputs right here. Right, so I have another group, and that is for the same thing basically, but for OpenSea. So I calculate again the listing price increments. I have my simulation alert that has the same price points put in as my actual listing action. This listing action will list on OpenSea, and it will use the price increments from my little calculator up here, and it will also set a 15 minutes expiration for the listings. Same again here, I will stop the automation once I've listed the number of tokens I specified up in the inputs, and that's pretty much it. So it's quite simple, and the results are very useful. I'm now able to list multiple tokens automatically. They will readjust floor, and they all have a little price increment added to them. So I can even capitalize on sweeps that others might be doing, and my listing will run automatically for this collection. I will be sharing this automation template to our template library, so you don't have to set all this up. You can simply add it to your Compass account from the automation library and start using it for your collections with one click. So that's it. Thank you for watching.